All right, boils and ghouls. So this won the poll. It beat out Nosferatu the Vampire, the remake from '79 with Klaus Kinski. I was looking forward to doing that, and I probably still will, because we have Nosferatu from Robert Eggers coming out on Christmas. So most likely we'll have a Nosferatu video out before then. I already uploaded the public domain original film, which was a fun time watching that with everybody, and yeah, now that's up there with the chat replay. So if you're a fan of the original, go check that out, watch that version, and read the chat. That way you can see everybody's thoughts as we were watching it. But it lost, is the point. So instead, we got Gaspar Noé's really controversial, amazingly shot, disturbing film Irreversible from 2002. We have Monica Bellucci in here as Alex. She was so fucking gorgeous, Bellucci. But I don't like thinking of it because of the content of the movie here. And then I don't speak French. I don't know the other people's names. But for anyone who hasn't seen this film, we have Alex, played by Bellucci, who is in a relationship with this guy Marcus, and the whole film is told in reverse chronological order, in 13 sequences or scenes that are all continuous one-shots. Or they were, I think some of them were composed to look like one continuous take, but they're basically all one continuous take. 13 of them going reverse in time. So it can be a little confusing, but there is a reason that Gaspar Noé filmed it and edited it more specifically this way, which we'll get into. The music in this movie is by Thomas Bangalter, who is half of Daft Punk, and I know he did a lot of scores. I don't know about his more recent movies. I haven't seen Gaspar Noé's more recent films, like his last two movies. I think Lux Eterna was the last one that I've seen, but his earlier films are all excellent. This is his second film after I Stand Alone from '98, which I haven't seen that movie in forever. But we see the main character of that movie, the butcher, who was jailed for having an incestuous relationship with his daughter. We see him in the opening, which is really the ending of the story, but in the opening scene, we see the butcher here. And I Stand Alone was a sequel to Noé's short, Carne, which had the butcher in it also, from, I don't remember the year, or very early 90s, I want to say. So you have this butcher throughout these three movies. It's cool that he makes an appearance here. Gaspar Noé also makes a cameo in this, in the Rectum nightclub. Yeah, it's a gay club. This is set in Paris, and there's a gay club called Rectum. And Noé has a cameo where he's jerking off in the gay club. Like, this movie is fucked up. But the way that it's filmed, all of Noé's films, the style to these films is just off the charts. The Dutch camera angles and just weird angles, and like in the opening of this movie with the camera that's spinning and stuff, he put it on a cable and like it was coming down and back up. All of the camera work in his films is amazing. I don't think this movie's a masterpiece or anything like that, but his next film, Enter the Void from 2009, is a masterpiece. That's my favorite Noé film, disregarding his last few ones that I haven't seen, his more recent ones. I know he did one with Argento acting in it. So we have Dario Argento acting in the Gaspar Noé film. Still haven't checked it out, so that's something I gotta add to the list. But this was mostly extremely controversial for the subject matter, and specifically the scene where Monica Bellucci's character Alex is anally raped in a tunnel for like 8 or 9 minutes. The sequence goes on for like 8-9 minutes straight. It's not fun to watch at all. It's there to just really hit home how violent and despicable the act was that this creep ass guy, enacted upon her. And this is why he edited this film in reverse chronological order, because in the opening sequence we have, or maybe it's the second one, whatever, but they're at the club, the Rectum. I don't know if it's the Rectum or Rectum, but it's one of those. And Marcus and, I forget the guy's name, he's an ex-boyfriend of Alex, and Marcus and him are friends. But they're at Rectum, and they're looking for the guy who raped Alex. And they find him, and we get a gnarly kill, and it's so over the top. It's so brutal looking, where they finally find this guy, because don't forget, this is at the end of the story. This is where it gets confusing. But this is how the story ends. He takes a fire extinguisher and just repeatedly bashes this guy in the face, and you see it just fucking chip it away. There's no face left at the end of all those hits. It's really, really chaotic, especially with how it's shot. And when you first see this, you're like, damn, this is so violent. What did this guy do to deserve this? Then, as we go backwards in time, forward in the movie, and we get to that rape scene with Bellucci's character, that's why he edited it this way. So then you see, oh, this guy absolutely deserved what happened to him, what we saw a little bit ago. That's why I think he edited the movie in reverse chronological order. I don't know if that's the sole reason, but I think that has a decent amount to do with it. Another thing that's great about this movie is the sound design and sound tricks that Noé uses. I think it's like the first half hour of this movie or so. I'm not going to give it away now. You'll see why later. Really, really creative and interesting to get, to bring emotion out of the people watching this, to add to the already disturbing shit that you see in the first 30 minutes of this movie. But since this is the first film by Gaspar Noé that I'm covering here on the channel, I wanted to give a little background on how I feel about him as a director and movies of his and all of that. So at 11 or so minutes in, let's actually deep dive into the movie Irreversible from 2002. Now, I already said how disturbing this movie is and controversial, and all of his films are not for maybe 90-95% of movie watchers. There's a very niche audience who understands and appreciates Noé's work. Kind of like Harmony Korine, who I just did a video on Kids, which he didn't direct, but he wrote. But then Gummo, and I don't know if I've seen a lot of his later films, but he's another director who's not for nearly almost everybody. But I think he's a genius, and I think he has made amazing art. Like, this is art house cinema right here. And we talk about credits now and then, like credits to movies that are actually enjoyable or entertaining. It's not much, but I love the opening credits to this because it plays the credits in reverse. So it keeps to the reverse chronological theme that we see throughout this movie, how the story plays out. That's cool. Then the strobing names, which that's another thing with this movie, and especially Enter the Void. That movie will give you a fucking seizure. If you have epilepsy or are prone to seizures, yeah, his movies are not for you. But the camera work, too. If you get motion sickness or anything like that, you're not going to get through 10 minutes of this movie. You're not going to enjoy it. You're not going to get through the first 10 minutes. But what great camera work. The camera is just, I think, like I said, it was on a cable, I'm pretty sure. And it's moving all around like this, and up and down, and all over the place with the white noise, and just this droning music that goes back and forth. And we go up into an apartment and we see the butcher from his last film, I Stand Alone. And he's sitting naked on a bed and he's talking to some other guy, the two of them having a conversation. And basically he says that time ruins everything. And then he goes on to tell him that he was arrested and he was in jail for molesting his daughter, which is the events of I Stand Alone. And then they hear police outside, and it pans back out, all one continuous take. Like I said, every sequence and scene in this film comes out of the window again, down and twisty, and then we see Marcus being taken out of, it is rectum. It's not the rectum, it's rectum. He's being taken out on a stretcher because he gets fucked up by, what's the dude's name in this? Tenia, the tapeworm. That's his name. He ends up getting his ass kicked by this dude before Pierre, that's the friend's name, ends up using the fire extinguisher and bashing his face in, but we didn't get there yet. We see him getting taken out, then we hear a lot of homophobic slurs and stuff like that, which is one thing that made this movie controversial too. This played at Cannes. I'm pretty sure that it didn't win, but it was nominated at the Cannes Film Festival. And a lot of people walked out too. But that's no surprise. That's also why Noé did his cameo, jerking off in the gay club, to show while filming and stuff, like, I'm not above these people, like, I'm jerking off in a gay club. He's not homophobic or anything. But it did get labeled that for a lot of the dialogue and stuff. This is a French film, so obviously it's in French. All the dialogue and, you know, the setting of rectum. But you hear people screaming out as they handcuff and take Pierre away for the murder of Tapeworm. You know, I hope they fuck you in the ass in prison, you get AIDS, and all that type of stuff. Then that's when the music really starts droning. Like very disorienting. And it's excellent at doing that, this film. And we go into the gay club, again with the camera just going nuts, and you hear moaning everywhere, and you just see weird sexual shit, but briefly as it pans around this place. It's like taking a tour of a gay club on a super heavy dosed LSD trip. And now let's talk about the sound tricks here. He ended up using low frequency sound that isn't able to be picked up by the human ear, but causes feelings of anxiety and unease and fear throughout the first half hour of this movie. So when you're watching it and seeing all this disturbing stuff take place, you don't even realize that your brain is being attacked by sound to make you feel extra disturbed and uneasy. And it's a brilliant idea. And it's been done before, but this is like a notable case of it, or one that I think of immediately. And I kind of self-sabotaged this video from the beginning. One, because, like I said, Noé's not for everybody. This film ain't for everybody. It's not something that is going to be as popular as other movies. But also, this entire time, you guys have had low-frequency sound playing that you can't hear. So if you've been feeling uneasy and anxious and shit like that, sorry, gotta get into the feel and theme of the movie, right? But such a creative decision. Then the next sequence, going back in time, I'm just going to do it, I guess, by sequence. That makes the most sense. We see Pierre and Marcus go into Rectum, the club, and they're looking for Tapeworm, this guy who raped Alex. And the club music, the fast club music that's blasting in the background with the droning shit on top of it and the white noise, man, it's so I don't even know the words for it. Disorienting is the best word, I guess. And he's running around Marcus through this club trying to find the Tapeworm. He's asking everybody, you know the tapeworm, you know the tapeworm. And they're all saying stuff to him that, I mean, I make a lot of dark jokes, and we talk about some taboo shit on here, but in a fun way. I can't even repeat the dialogue in this movie. This shit will get banned. But they're all saying despicable shit back to him. And he ends up finding, that's right, because I always forget, it's not the tapeworm that gets bashed in with the fire extinguisher. He thinks it's him because he finally is taken to the tapeworm, but there's like 3-4 people there, and he's asking which one is the tapeworm, and no one will answer. But then one of the guys breaks his arm. He just puts him on the ground and snaps his arm up. That looks really good. And then Pierre comes in with the fire extinguisher. And when I say that this goes on for a while, I mean this goes on for a while. I don't even know the hits. Maybe a dozen hits from this fire extinguisher, maybe more. And like I said, you feel every impact of that fire extinguisher hitting this guy's face. And by the end of it, the jaws protruding and the rest of the face is like down to here, mushed in. The effects look excellent. And then you see the actual tapeworm who raped Alex standing there with like a grin on his face. So I always forget that for some reason. I mean, I haven't seen this in years probably. But Pierre kills the wrong person. Doesn't kill the tapeworm. So this guy gets away with it in the end. But I mean, one hell of a friend. And it's the ex-boyfriend of Marcus's girl right now. So he really went to bat for Marcus here. Murdered a guy. Because after he breaks his arm, he tries raping him. And that's when Pierre comes in with the fire extinguisher. So he went to prison for the rest of his life for murder. To help his friend out here. Tragic. Like they say at the beginning of the movie. The butcher. Time ruins everything. And then we go on to the previous next segment. But what an opening to a movie, man. I mean, what a crazy, creative, chaotic, just disturbing, but not really in the content yet. That's reserved for the infamous scene in the tunnel. But just the way it's shot really just creeps you out as you're going through this club and as you see this guy get his face crushed in. Excellent opening to a movie. Then in the next sequence we see Marcus and Pierre in a cab. Marcus is driving and then he gets out and he starts asking people on the street where Rectum is. And I know this sounds ridiculous. What a name for a club, but it makes sense. And it's even more tragic what Pierre does to the guy that he thinks is the one who raped Alex at the end of this. Because as the movie goes on and backwards through the events, you see that Pierre really is hesitant here. He doesn't want to do all this. Marcus is the one who's just enraged. And it makes sense. I mean, his girlfriend is the one who was raped like this. Yeah, Pierre dated her too. But I don't think we find out much, if anything, of their past relationship, Pierre and Alex. I mean, we just know that Pierre is an ex of hers. So he doesn't want to be involved with this. He's like saying, like, oh my God, and like, come on, forget your revenge. Then it goes back again, and we see how he got the cab. And he was in a cab with Pierre, with a Chinese driver, and he's screaming at him and stuff. The Rectum, like, we got to find Rectum. And this guy has no idea where this club is. And after a whole bunch of arguing, Marcus just ends up kicking this guy out of his own cab and stealing the cab. And then that's what leads to the prior scene. I told you it's going to be confusing. Of them finding out where the club is from the people on the street. But then he takes something, I don't know what it is, and starts smashing the windshield of the cab because Pierre's in there and he doesn't want to get out. Like I said, he doesn't want to have anything to do with this. So it's very tragic that he ends up going to prison at the end of this movie for killing the wrong guy. And he didn't even want to be involved with this. Then we go to the next scene, and this is where they get the tip of the guy's name, of Tenia, the tapeworm, from these prostitutes on the street. So in this sequence, they end up going up to a transvestite prostitute. And there's a bunch of whores on the street and everything. And if I recall right, I think she left her ID in the tunnel that Alex gets brutalized in. And that's how they find her. I'll find out when it gets back in the past. But Marcus is like threatening to cut her face open and rearrange her transvestite face, he says to her. Just brutal shit. I can't even repeat the dialogue in this movie. This shit will get bad. And she ends up giving it up and saying, Latania, the tapeworm. And then she mentions the club and says rectum. And she says, are you messing with me? A tapeworm in a rectum? That's a funny line. Not supposed to be, but I chuckled. And then they see a cab, which was the cab that they stole, and they get into it. Then we go on back in time to the next sequence. And speaking of Gummo earlier by Harmony Korine, that's probably coming soon too, because I just downloaded it the other night. I haven't seen that movie in forever, so that'll be interesting. And this is turning into Disturbing December. Disturbing Holiday December. That's the unofficial theme for the month. Half controversial, weird, disturbing movies, and half holiday horror. Because what better time of year to be filled with cheer and absolutely be disturbed than the holidays? Previously on Irreversible, then we see Pierre talking to the cops that showed up for Alex's rape. And I forgot that she was put into a coma. I know that he brutalizes her, and her face is so messed up and blood everywhere. They're taking her away on a stretcher, and they mention she was raped and now she's in a coma. And I want to say Alex because that, it's both a male and female name, but whatever. Marcus is obviously distraught as can be. And I forgot this too. He says that she's his wife. So I forgot that they were married. I know that she's pregnant because I remember at the end of the movie, the beginning of the story, she takes a pregnancy test. And I'm pretty sure it was positive, so I'm pretty sure she's pregnant. But she ends up in a coma here. But before we get back to that, they end up finding, after talking to the cops, they end up finding these street thugs who, they're pretty much the ones who talk Marcus into this whole revenge plot against the tapeworm. Because Marcus just saw Alex on the stretcher and heard all that, and it has no idea what to think. And then these guys approach him and start saying, you look well dressed, you have money, this is our neighborhood. We can find anybody much quicker than the idiot cops can. So if you got money, we found ID, and it was the ID of the transvestite prostitute. They found a bag with her ID in it, the street dogs. So they said, we have identification, we could track her, and we can bring this guy to you. Are you in or not? Don't be a pussy, are you in or not? They basically really push it on him. And then out of just sheer desperation and being completely lost and not knowing what to think or feel, he accepts and he pays him. Then we get to the infamous scene from this movie, which I can't even watch this whole scene. Seriously, it does really hit hard. This might be one of the most disturbing rape sequences in a movie that I've ever seen. Maybe even the most, because this is much more intense than Last House on the Left or I Spit on Your Grave and the remakes of those two and a lot of those rape revenge films. This, I think, is worse just because of how it's an uncut shot. It goes on for 9 minutes, and just the things that this guy is saying to her, because she ends up leaving a party, which we'll see in a bit, after Marcus and Pierre get into a little argument about Alex, basically. And she goes, I keep saying tunnel, it's like an alley, but it's not like a New York City alley, just like in between two buildings, some creepy ass small alley. It's painted all red. That looks really cool, actually. But it has a ceiling to it, so it's kind of like a tunnel. It doesn't really matter at all, but it's a tunnel alley. This guy, the tapeworm, is harassing the transvestite prostitute, who drops her bag with the ID. And then Alex comes into the tunnel, and he immediately attacks her and gets her on the ground. And then 9 minutes play out. But as disturbing as it is, like I said, when you get to this point in the movie, you've seen that guy get his face pummeled in with the extinguisher. Then you've seen Alex's face all bloodied up, and she's in a coma, and you hear what happened to her. When you see it, it really fucking punches you in the stomach, and it really is effective at making you not justify, but I don't know the right word, but it makes you take all the previous stuff that you've seen and say to yourself, like I said, damn, this fucker deserved that, even though it wasn't him. But the actual tapeworm, he definitely deserves everything that happened to that other guy. Damn, man, what a brave role for Monica Bellucci to take. I can't think of many actresses who would take a role with a scene like this. I mean, she's only in a small amount of this movie, more so towards the end or beginning parts of the story. But that whole scene in the tunnel, after he's done, then the brutality, kicking her in the face and punching her, then the camera does this amazing swivel around from like the back to the front, and he starts smashing her head down into the pavement. It's so fucked up. But I've always thought this, ever since I first saw this. Hat off to Bellucci for doing this role and doing this performance, because she does kill it. As disturbing as the content is, she is unbelievable in that scene. Like, it looks like you're watching an actual sexual assault happen. That's how realistic and raw and gritty it looks. And the performances from the tapeworm, too. Vile, evil shit that he's spewing. And everything that she does in that scene. What an amazing performance. And then we go back before that to Marcus and Pierre, talking and not really arguing, but at this party, which Alex left because Marcus got really drunk. He did a lot of cocaine, and she got pissed off, and she ended up leaving, and that's when she walks into the tunnel, and that terrible fate awaits her. And it's interesting because of the format of this movie. At this party, that you get to see Marcus incredibly fucked up. Then as it goes back in time in the story, you see him more sober, like as time goes on. That's cool. And the whole title for this movie, to go back to what the butcher says at the beginning of the movie, end of the story, time ruins everything. That you can't turn back time. It's irreversible. And the damage done to Alex and to everybody in this movie, it's all irreversible. I mean, it's a great title for this film. And I love all of the Daft Punk-esque music throughout this movie, especially at the party they're at. A bunch of electronic music playing, of course, by half of Daft Punk. Always love Daft Punk, so great score to this movie and great music. The lighting is excellent at that party. There's a room with the black light going on, and then there's just the way that it's shot. It's not, there's, for people who haven't seen this movie and sitting through this, it's not all with the camera going crazy like for the entire movie. A lot of scenes, the more chaotic ones, have that really unique and disorienting camera work. Because then we see them on the train, all three of them heading to the party. And just a static shot looking right at them, but it's a long shot, so it goes down. You see all the way to the back of the train and all the passengers, the green light on the train. Like, it's shot so well. And my only real complaint with this movie, aside from, it's just something you don't watch often, is because it's told in reverse chronological order and all the intense stuff happens in the first 45, 50 minutes of this movie. The last act of this movie, it slows down. I mean, and it makes sense because it's the beginning of the story. But from a viewing experience, I don't know, the pacing slows down a considerable amount. The dialogue is still good. Like, all the dialogue when they're on the train, and Pierre is obsessed with how he was never able to please Alex in their relationship, and Marcus is right there joining in on the conversation, and he's saying, like, what did I do wrong? But in other terms that I'm not going to repeat. Then we see Alex and Marcus nude in bed, being woken up by a phone call, and they're just laying in bed, caressing each other. Monica Bellucci looks fucking amazing. And I forgot that she had a dream of the red tunnel that she gets assaulted in. Totally forgot about that. So there's some premonition type stuff going on here, that she had a dream of the location that was going to happen to her later that night, because this only takes place in, I don't know, a few hours in one night. So apparently she had a dream of what was going to happen to her, just not exactly what was going to happen to her, where it was going to take place though. But again, going back to what I was saying about how the pacing slows down, the gut punch at the end of this movie is, yeah, she takes a pregnancy test and it's positive. And that's the final nail in the coffin, if you haven't been just fucked up mentally yet watching this whole movie, is finding that revelation out at the end. It's like, oh. And we end with her in the park, and she's reading. This is, I guess, before that. And this has to be intentional. It has to be. But the camera starts its rotating thing, but it's rotating reverse clockwise. Like, it's going back in time, just like this whole film has. I guarantee that had to have been a deliberate choice for it to be spinning counterclockwise like that. And then we just have Noé's infamous strobing fucking effect that'll give you a seizure. And then it just ends with a French phrase on the screen, which I'm pretty sure is "time ruins everything," which is what we hear the butcher say at the end of the story at the beginning of the movie. So that's Gaspar Noé's Irreversible from 2002. What a confusing movie, but this movie is a work of art. It truly is. And I've said this a few times. It doesn't matter the content that's in a film. If it disturbs you, if it makes you happy, if it makes you laugh, if it makes you cry, if anything like that. If a piece of art can elicit any type of emotion out of 99.99% of people who experience it, whether it's you're completely disturbed and you want to retch, or if you find it all just fascinating, the way that this is filmed and shot, and the amazing camera work and the sound design and the performances, everything, no matter what, it's still eliciting an emotion or many emotions, and that's art. So this movie is just an excellent film, a very disturbing one, and this is basically what kick-started Noé's career. And Enter the Void, that'll probably be the next film by him, whenever that comes, not anytime soon, but that'll be the next video on a Gaspar Noé film, because that is a masterpiece, in my opinion. That film is an absolute work of art. The color usages, we'll save it for that. And if you haven't seen Enter the Void from 2009, check that movie out. It's not as disturbing and, the subject matter. There's still a lot of crazy shit in that movie, but not like this. It's a lot more of like a psychedelic trip, and it's all POV for the most part. So check that one out. If you have seen Irreversible, let me know your thoughts on it. Do you enjoy this film? What do you think of Gaspar Noé's filmography as a whole? Leave it in the comments, and hope everyone's having a great morning, afternoon, or night. I'll talk to you soon. Take care, everybody.